This is for AP Biology, Big Idea 1, which is evolution. The process of evolution drives the diversity and unity of life. Listed below are some scientists and theories you should know. Notably, you should know about Linnaeus and his classification system, which includes domain, kingdom, phylum, class, and more. And then you should also know about Darwin and his ideas about descent with modification. And all these theories kind of came together to form natural selection. This is when genetic variations are inheritable, species overproduce, there's competition for resources, and not all offspring survive. So the favorable traits are the ones that show up in populations. And evolution does not occur in the individual itself, but rather the population. And this is due to competition for limited resources, so the individuals with more favorable traits are likely to survive and reproduce. There's 3 types of selection. The first is directional selection, which is when the phenotypic graph will shift to either the right or left. One example will be giraffes with longer necks. More long-necked giraffes will show up in the population due to their ability to reach the food on higher trees. And then stabilizing selection happens when the intermediate phenotype is favored. This can be thought of maybe birth weight or the weight of plants. A taller plant might collapse and a shorter plant might not be able to get sunlight, but the plant of the middle height will be more likely to survive, and the graph will show the intermediate evolving more. And then disruptive selection is the opposite. It's when conditions favor the individuals at both extremes. And then there's also inter and intra selection. This is for non-random mating, where individuals choose mates based on their particular traits. And then next are different types of evolution. There's divergent evolution, where 2 species evolve separately. This is usually due to environmental circumstances. And for convergent evolution, 2 different branches of species converge, and they have analogous traits, which is also known as homoplasy, when they adapt to similar ecological conditions. And then last is parallel evolution or coevolution. And this is usually with predator and prey relationships, or parasites and hosts, where they reciprocally affect each other. And here are some examples of homologous structures and analogous structures. So for homologous structures, such as an arm or a limb, these all have a common ancestor. And then analogous structures for like an insect wing versus a bat wing, they're similar because they both arise due to the organism's need to fly, but they do not have a common ancestor. Next, you need to know the different types of speciation. There's allopatric, which is one with a barrier. So species will not be able to reproduce due to a geographic barrier, such as a mountain in between these 2 trees. And there's also sympatric speciation, which is the formation of a new species without a geographic barrier. And this is common in plants which demonstrate polyploidy. This is when the number of chromosomes double. So the individuals with the double set amount of chromosomes cannot mate with the other individuals, and this could lead to a new species. Another important thing to know is hybridization. Hybrids occur when 2 different species mate and produce offspring, and it could either be reinforced if the offspring are not really fit to survive, or fused where 2 species become one, or stable where there's a balance between the separate species and the hybrids itself. And for reproductive isolation, there are 5 prezygotic barriers which prevent fertilization. You should know there's habitat, temporal, behavioral, and mechanical, and gametic. And then for postzygotic, you should know there's hybrid breakdowns, which prevents the formation of fertile offspring since they're feeble or sterile. And the last section for evolution is the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. This is when allele frequencies are constant, aka no evolution. And here are the 2 equations you should know. p plus q equals 1, and then p squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1, or 100%. And then p squared is the dominant, homozygous dominant, the q squared is the homozygous recessive, and 2pq are heterozygous. And the conditions for Heidrich-Weinberg is there needs to be a large population, random mating, no mutations, no natural selection, and no migration, which is gene flow, whereas when populations move in and out, transferring genes. And then here's one example of the problem. So you're given 9%. This would be the q squared. So to find q, you do the square root of 9%, and then you get 0.3. And since p plus q equals 1, you could deduce that p equals 0.7, or 70%. And to find part A, the heterozygous, you go 2pq, multiply it out, and you'll get 0.42 decimal, or 42%. And to find the homozygous dominant, which is p squared, you would do this 0.7 to the power of 2, and you would get 0.49 decimal, or 49%. And you can find more information on collegeboard.org.